Hey guys, Luke here with James at the Kenton studio, and today we're going to be talking Riflescopes. We're really excited about this one. We've been thinking like what we're going to record next, and we thought let's just go right into it and start talking about Riflescopes, right? The bread and butter of the business.
I'd say a lot of our questions come to us through, customers. What scope should I get next? What would meet my needs and stuff like that?
Yeah, and what's really cool about our business is we get to quite literally touch hundreds of different scopes and play with them out in the field, right? So it's a big plus. And then, having a very niche product, working directly with scopes, I mean, that's just the name of the game, right?
Yeah.
So, and then your last job, I mean, you were literally mounting scopes, right?
Yep. I was mounting scopes, looking through them, laser bore sighting them, or just bore sighting them in general, but got to look through a lot of them.
Yeah, so you got to play with a lot of scopes. Cool. Well, I guess we can just jump right in. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say going forward, it's really about, first of all, what are you doing with the scope? What is your goal? Whether it's, are you hunting squirrels at 100 yards and in, or are you trying to shoot out to a mile?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Goal. What are you looking for when you're buying the scope? So with that said, there's two types of scopes really out there, right? Two types of scopes. We got your hunting scope, and then we have your precision or bench scope. Right. Kind of give me a quick rundown of the two differences there.
So for the hunting style, you're going to see probably lower magnification. A lot of them have the bigger front objective because they want to get in as much light as possible. The precisions do tend to as well, but definitely is a priority on the hunting style scope. Weight is often a concern. They're trying to keep it light. They're trying to keep it pretty compact. And very often you'll see the knobs are smaller because they don't want them to snag as much.
Sure.
Often come with like either threaded dust caps or things like that, or maybe some now started coming with the locking turrets. But more of a priority on practicality as far as it's going to be moving around through the brush. Don't want it to snag, things like that. For the long distance precision, you're going to see way bigger turrets. You're going to see a lot more adjustment, higher magnification, ranges. Now, especially with like the PRS and NRL type shooting, they want low and high. So, I mean, you could see like, I know Night Force has like a 2.5 to 20, or you have like, I think, what is it, the 7 to 35. I mean, you're really trying to get both ends of the spectrum. And with that definitely comes weight, but a lot of those guys are going for weight. They want those guns to be heavy. They don't want it to recoil, and so it's totally opposite builds as far as what you're going to get out of the box.
Yeah, and certainly they are interchangeable, and we do have a lot of customers use a scope for both bench shooting and hunting. But I just thought a fun, quick example of kind of an extreme issue that a lot of shooters come across is if you're using, let's say, a precision rifle for hunting that happens to be really heavy. I mean, there's some 45 ounces out there. Then that's where that weight factor comes in, and a lot of new guys just don't know that, and they'll get a really heavy scope. You're out there, kind of backpacking along, and that weight will catch up to you. And then the other example on the other side is using a hunting scope for precision shooting that's really limited with internal adjustment. So you're kind of, although you might have the magnification, you're kind of losing a little bit of that internal adjustment, kind of reaching out there with a caliber that's capable of doing that.
Absolutely.
So I just thought of those two examples. Number one factor comes down to, of course, budget, right? Everyone's budget's going to be different, of course. In the scope world, we're talking $200, literally up to $6,000. So there's a big range to choose from. So that's going to be a factor for guys too. And I mean, if you're spending $3,000, $4,000 on a nice rifle, don't get
invest in the scope.
Don't get
please.
a $300 scope.
If you're willing to put down some serious money, and even the budget rifles, all rifles deserve some love. And at the end of the day, a lot of guys are like, well, the rifle is where the accuracy is coming from.
Yeah.
And they might go so cheap that maybe your rifle can't hold zero, or you can't see through it. And I can tell you, like, I grew up with like a Redfield 3 to 9, and that was on a Remington 700. And for hunting scopes, those are really, really popular.
Yeah.
But when I I started learning precision shooting, and then I got into like, I think my first precision scope was the Viper PST Gen 2 from Vortex.
Yeah.
5 to 25. And I remember sitting my dad down on a 308, and he's like, I can see the target.
I can see, yeah.
And it was a whole different ball game. And so I think once you've, realize that, yes, your bullet needs to get there where you want it to with the right barrel, with the right action, all that. The scope is what you're looking through.
Sure.
And that's where, you shouldn't be like, well, I really don't want to spend the money. You kind of almost need to adjust your mindset to say, I really enjoy this rifle. I get now, there's the phrase buy once, cry once. And the reality is if you're into shooting and collecting and all that, you're going to be crying a lot. So it's just one of those things of, to say, well, I could buy another gun with that. Yeah. And that's going to make yours way more special.
Yeah. Something that I've appreciated too with all that is really using a nice scope on your everyday rifle. Mm-hmm. It might not be your most expensive rifle, but if it's a rifle you are using every day, whether it's squirrel hunting, target shooting at the house or the range, put a nice scope on it if you're going to be using it every day, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's just something that I've appreciated actually over the years too. But going real quick, you talking about cheap scopes. Yeah, I mean, you're talking losing your zero. The tracking's not going to be the best. And then that glass quality, obviously number one. So
that and a lot of narrow field of view. Like, I mean, we picked up a few like Amazon specials just to see them. We've had a couple of customers be like, "Could you make a turret for this?" And
we're like, "What is it?"
Yeah, and so we've picked up a couple just to look through them.
Yeah.
And it honestly, there was one that I really thought I was looking through like a paper towel tube.
Two pieces of glass.
Yeah. It's not much. And so especially when you're putting that against recoil and things like that, it's just, invest, especially now, you have, and we'll get into it, but a lot more budget friendly brands that are offering so much.
Great scopes. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll jump into it for sure. Well, let's talk about some factors. We got some little notes here so we stay on track a little bit, but what are important factors that make up a scope? Number one, glass, right?
Glass.
Is that probably number one, you'd say?
For a lot of people, because, I mean, overall it's going to take several pieces to make, the whole project, but the glass is, at the end of the day, what you are looking through and what you are going to notice, any impurities or spots or things like that. And you can, some people, especially with like way better eyes than me, can, I've had people pick up scopes and be like, oh, is this made from this particular region? And they've nailed it.
Yeah. There's a whole industry behind the scenes when it comes to the glassware. I mean, off the top of my head, the big four, if you're going to scope directly from China, it's going to have, not the best glass. The next is going to be Philippines. Yep. And then you get to like that Japanese glass, which is really starting to get up there. And then you have after that, the European glass, which is kind of paralleled with some of the American glass that's built here. And there are some scopes that are built here. They're usually on the pricier side, but there are some of those too. So, we can get into that. But okay, so glassware, what else do we need to talk on glass? I mean, when it comes to the glass, the factors are important. I got written down here, which is a good reminder for myself, is clarity, light transmission, right? Bringing in that light, color, and then sharpness of your image. And the way you really can test whether the scope's good at all those factors is zooming in.
Yes.
Really zooming in, because a scope, if you put a $2,000 scope next to a $200 scope, with a close magnification, you might not tell much, but once you start zooming in, you'll really see, okay, here's the difference.
Yeah, your image gets dark, it gets fuzzy, and all of a sudden you're like, man, this was way better at 5 power, whatever.
Yeah.
But definitely, I know another thing with the glass is the coatings. I know there's several different coatings that's where probably a lot of like your made in China scopes. Yeah. You're probably not going to have the highest quality coatings.
Yeah, it also comes down to protecting the lens too. Yeah. China scope's going to scratch a lot faster, easier, so absolutely, good point. Next factor, magnification. Should we talk about that?
Magnification range is definitely something. I know guys are like, I think the LPVOs are getting a little more popular, even with hunting, because why have a 3 to 9 when you can have a 1 to 8, 1 to 10?
1 to 10, yeah. A lot of 110s out there now,
And especially when you talk to hunters and they're like, well, I took this one at 50 yards, 25, they're so close in, and when you're looking at a 3 times magnified image, it's hard to do up close.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if you're doing kind of hunting, especially out here out east, where a lot of your shots are going to be within 50 to 200 yards. Yeah, that 2-3 power is really a good dynamic of field of view, but getting a low magnification out of it. So popular magnifications, let's just throw some out there: 3 to 9, or I guess we can start 2 to 7, 3 to 9,
4 to 12,
4 to 12, 4 to 16, 5 to 20, 5 to 25, goes up from there. They even have like 4 to 27s. Actually, that GLX behind you that we had in one of our videos, that's a 4.5 27, so it's a cool magnification range, and then it keeps going up from there. 6 36, 8 to 32, and
you have like the Golden Eagle from
Yeah.
Vortex at 15 to 60, I think. I mean, you can really get up there.
Citron's got one too. It's like 50 power. You have a Trijicon.
Yeah.
The 10 mile, right?
The 10 mile, 5 to 50.
5 to
that
50.
thing's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, you can definitely, and the thing weighs, I've never felt a scope that weighs more than that thing.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a lot of glass in that scope.
Yeah. How does it like 40 and 50 power look when you're zoomed in?
40 and 50. 50 got a little dark.
Okay.
I mean, as far as like overall image quality, I didn't notice a reduction. With Trijicon, you're definitely paying for it. I mean, their glass is just incredible.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
But as far as the darkness of the image, and I mean, I've always heard, a lot of people say the top, I'd say 3 to 5 power on a scope. They're like, I really don't go to it just because you lose so much in that last little bit.
Yeah.
So I'd say like 40 power, and I think that's actually even where they had, because it's a second focal plane scope, they have a box around it showing that's where the reticle is actually true to the measurements.
Okay.
So I think that was kind of like you should probably keep it around here, maybe not, but that was where I like to keep it.
Where was that magnification at?
40 power.
40, that high.
Yeah.
Interesting. Cool, yeah.
You can definitely see through the bullet holes with that.
Long range shooting with that.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. And then, so at the end of the day, more glass doesn't mean a better scope.
No.
That's pretty obvious, right? You can get a scope that's a 3 to 9 that's going to be a lot better with all the other factors in play than, a scope that's 5 to 25 or whatever.
Right.
So it's just something to keep in mind too. I mean, again, hunting, we can talk about quickly range. I mean, if you're rocking a 3 to 9, in our opinion, from a custom turret perspective, I mean, that's going to be good out to 500 yards roughly?
Probably. I think I've heard a lot of military guys say for every 100 yards or 100 meters you're shooting, you want about 1 power magnification.
1 power. Okay.
I'd say for most of the civilian market, and whether, I just want to be able to see better, 2 to 3 power per 100 yards is just nice to have. If I'm shooting at 15 power at 500 yards, I feel like that's comfortable enough. I feel like I can see the target up well. And I can see my impacts and I can make my corrections. But that also goes into, just several things. Like I run a first focal plane. So I want to have my, scaling all there. So if there's a little bit of wind, I can measure it, things like that. If you're just like, man, it's how tight of a group do you want? Hunters, they're always just going for vital organ.
Sure.
So you don't really need that 15 power for a 300 yard shot by any means.
Yeah, not 300, no.
It's also a matter of, just like I was saying, of how much do you want to see?
Yeah. I think in our industry too, with our business, just kind of a fun fact, dealing with quite literally thousands of scopes, the most popular magnification range is going to be 4 to 16, 5 to 25. Yeah. Excuse me. And those are going to get you, out 1,000 yards. Yeah. 800 to 1,000 yards is kind of the max for those. 5 to 25 gets you a little bit farther, of course, but those are 2 most popular magnifications we're getting, right? For orders.
Probably the most popular, and they're comfortable. Yeah. I know for my precision guns, I run 5 to 25 pretty much across the board. 4 to 16 is probably going on my next one. I mean, it's just that kind of range. It's really hard to beat when you're getting enough on the top end, enough on the bottom.
Okay. So tell me about the front objective.
So the front objective is going to change a couple of things. The biggest one is going to be how much light you're getting through the scope.
Light gathering, yep.
Now it's also going to change how low you can put your scope to the actual rifle, which I know we have a lot of guys saying, well, that it does change your trajectory, but when we're calculating that with your scope height, we really do try to take that into consideration to the best of our possibility. But I try to make sure that guys check, does your rifle have an adjustable cheek weld? Because otherwise they end up getting a 56 front objective and they have like the really flat stocks and they're like, oh, I got to float my head. And like, that's just not fun.
Yeah, I subscribe to the idea that you really don't want more than a 50 millimeter front objective for hunting purposes, just because of that cheek weld placement is just not very comfortable. And then of course back to the weight factor, right? If you're doing more than 50, I mean, it really gets heavy. Most guys, again, going that 4 to 16 by 44, it's going to be a good hunting range. And then again, up to that 50, there's a lot of 4 to 16 by 50s too. And again, you got to, as a shooter, you have a fun time kind of figuring out, light gathering versus weight factor, which one's more important to you. And you're only talking a couple ounces at that point, but still, or maybe a little more than a couple ounces, but it's just something to keep in mind.
You tend to see a trend of your magnification will be followed by the front objective, because as you get to that higher magnification, you're losing a lot of light. So I've even seen some scopes that, you can prioritize whatever you want. So if let's say light really is, because guys like the, early morning or, dusk hunts, I've seen 3 to 9 by 56. Like if they're like light is your priority, you can pick a priority within what you're looking for in your scope, and you can find something that is probably chasing after that exact same point you are. But normally you'll see with the higher magnification, bigger front objectives, things like that, and vice versa, going the other direction. But it's truly down to what is your goal and how far do you want to shoot.
Sure. And then next factor too, related to that, is going to be scope size, the tube size. So tube size, I mean, even I've seen this kind of evolve over time. I mean, there was a lot of 1-inch scopes out there, most scopes for a while. And then nowadays, most hunting rifles are going to be 30 millimeter. 1 inches are kind of, I mean, there's a lot of good 1 inches still out there, and it fits your budget. Hey, go for it. But that 30 millimeter is going to be the most popular.
I'd say it's 1 inch is almost out the door. I really don't see many scopes still being made. Maybe some of I see a couple of rimfire scopes or some lower magnification, or hunting scopes still being made in 1 inch. 30 millimeter, I just think offers a lot in the way of you're gaining adjustment range on your turret. You're gaining I think overall. I know there's not many direct correlations, but I've noticed the 30 millimeter tubes tend to have a nicer field of view.
And it gives you an advantage on exit pupil too. So that's something too. And then again, back to light gathering. That's another factor too. So once you start hitting the precision bench shooting, then you're going to start jumping up to that 34 millimeter.
And then has Zeiss up to 36 millimeter tube?
Not 36. The S3 LRP is 34.
34. Okay.
The LRP S3. I know Leopold's got some bigger sizes, and Trijicon, I believe, does too. And then there's some others out there floating, like some big names, some expensive scopes like Collis and Zero Compromise and stuff, kind of passing those 34s. But anyway, tube size, most hunting out there is gonna be 30. 30,
because 34 you definitely jump in weight.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's scope tube. So let's talk about your eyepiece and your parallax adjustment. You want to explain those to me?
So depending on your make, model, when it was made, where it was made, you're going to tend to see a couple of different knobs that aren't adjusting your elevation and windage. Those knobs could be your illumination, or a lot of the time it's going to be your rear diopter or your parallax adjustment. The rear diopter lens is going to adjust the focus of your reticle to your eye. So if your reticle's looking fuzzy, doesn't necessarily mean it's the scope. It could just be that needs to be adjusted. So very often on the back of the scope, closest to your eye, you can turn that left or right to adjust that to yourself. For that, I personally will take it into a room and look at a wall, try to keep it as blank as possible, and I'll adjust that piece until the reticle is clear.
That's a good little secret.
Because that really won't change much with magnification, to my knowledge. The one that will change with magnification and how far your target is going to be your parallax. Your parallax,
which is more related to the target, that you're shooting at.
That's going to be, you can see it on I think the first way a lot of people started to do it was on the front, like the bell of the scope.
Yeah.
There was a big knob with a bunch of numbers on it, and that was, if you were shooting at 50 yards, you'd turn that to 50, and your image would be in focus as far as your target goes.
Yeah.
Now it's moved a lot of the time where you're going to see it on the left-hand side, so you'll have your elevation adjustment on top, windage on the right-hand side, and then on the left-hand side, you're going to have that parallax.
Yeah. So here we got that S3 Zeiss, and elevation, windage, and like you're talking about, you got your eyepiece back here, and then you have your parallax adjustment with the illumination.
On the side, that's
on the
where
left side,
a lot of scopes are starting to move. If they have the illumination, is going to have them kind of stacked on top
instead of like a button on the tube.
Right.
Yeah.
Some of the ones before that, like off to a 45-degree angle, there was illumination on the back, and that one works too. I think the goal was just to try to put it all in one place. But that parallax is going to be how far away you're shooting, and like I said, normally they're numbered. So you don't have to guess or fine tune, but that's what that's for. And then, of course, you have your magnification adjustment on the back.
Cool. All right. Well, let's quickly touch up on reticle and illumination.
Yeah.
So you got first focal plane, second focal plane.
Yes.
Explain the difference.
So just to give like a rundown, second focal plane, when you adjust your magnification, your reticle's not moving. It's going to stay the same to your perspective, and it's not going to adjust. It is fixed within the scope.
Yep.
The first focal plane is going to, or front focal plane, either one, is going to move with your magnification. That way your reticle is to scale no matter what power you're on. The second focal plane, if you're running just a dot, it really doesn't matter. If you're running holdovers, I've seen many people when I worked at a range get frustrated at, well, I was just using that holdover and now it doesn't work.
Sure.
Well,
magnification change.
You moved your holdover. Yeah. So that's something to consider.
And I might get a lot of pushback for this, but generally speaking, second focal planes are going to be a little more popular when it comes to hunting because of that low light condition. Your reticle, you'll still be able to see your target with the reticle. And then as of, compared to the first focal plane at that low magnification range on that dawn and dusk shooting, it's really hard to see the reticle. Yeah. So generally that's what you'll see out in the shooting world. And again, if you're doing long range precision shooting with that first focal plane, right, keeping that consistent scale as you're changing the zoom power is going to be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. If you're just like, man, how far off was I? I've seen some people, or if you know the exact size of the target, you might be able to get away saying like, all right, if I cut that in half, whatever. In general, I do a little bit of hunting, not a lot of hunting. I tend to run first focal plane on everything just because I like having as much information as I possibly can. That's why I run the military format turrets too, is because I just want it all. I do have a couple of rigs though that I wanted simplistic, and I think a couple of just the illuminated dot with a duplex reticle, I think they're phenomenal. And I think those with either like a speed dial or the LR Hunter of just, keeping it clean and simple, those are great for hunting. You do have three different types of reticles, really. You got the basic crosshairs. There's a lot of different names for that. Zeiss Z-Plex, you got duplex, and so forth. And then you have a BDC reticle, right, which is going to be for a certain caliber. And then you have the crosshairs. The Christmas tree crosshair that's going to give you, your elevation, windage, MOA or mils. So that's that. Illumination, either like you said, illumination will just be a dot right in the middle, or you'll illuminate the whole Christmas tree or part of it. Yeah, it really comes down to brand. I've seen some where, for a lot of the ones where it's just the fine crosshairs, it might just be a dot in the middle. I've seen some.
Most of those are going to be second focal plane, by the way, right?
Yes, most of those are
just a dot.
I don't. There might be a few that are first focal plane. I can't imagine
that are just a dot. No, there's not a ton. Yeah, typically your first focal plane will all be illuminated if there's illumination, or most of it, so you can read that scale in that low light condition. It's easier to read it, so that's what the difference between those two. And then when you're hunting, just using the center crosshairs with our turret, then you'll just need the dot. So.
But the illumination on the Christmas tree, if that's something that concerns you, definitely try to look up an image of it illuminated, because I've seen some where it's just straight down the middle and maybe to the sides. I've seen some where just the center crosshair is illuminated, And I've seen some where the whole thing is blown up. And I've seen one where the whole entire tree was lit up at night, and it's hard to see through.
Fun little secret that I've learned with my dad over the years is if you want to tell if the scope's good quality when it comes to the illumination, see how dim you can get it with night vision. Because if you get it to its lowest setting and you put a night vision on in front of it and it's just too dang bright, you can't see, well, then it's not very, you can't get it real fine. But some of these scopes, you can get them so dim you can't even see it with the naked eye, but then you get the night vision in front of it and you can still see the dots. So just something I've learned over the years, which is pretty cool.
See, I hadn't heard that about the low end. The high end, I do remember recommending to people if they have the chance, especially if you're like in a shop and you're looking at half a dozen scopes and you're trying to make a decision, illumination's a big factor. Try to look outside, like sure middle of the day, because otherwise it might say daylight bright, and that varies from company to company.
Yeah. Some guys like running their illumination the whole hunt, so. Cool. All right. Well, it's illumination. What else we got? Turret system. This is probably the one we should spend the most time on real quick, although we're probably, 25 minutes in this, but... Turret system, this is what we do full time. So every scope out there is going to have some sort of elevation and windage adjustment. Yeah. Typically, your hunting scopes, and this is just a general rule, but your hunting scopes will be dust cap covered. And then your precision bench shooting scopes are going to have nice, large, big turrets. And you kind of explained that in the beginning, you don't want them to kind of snag on things and stuff. Again, general rule, and one that pops at the top of my head, Zeiss V4 V6 got a nice exposed turret, which is still for hunting, doesn't really get in the way, zero stop, all that good stuff. But that's just kind of a general rule. Yeah. What else do we want to talk about with those? Gosh, obviously you have your click value. Typically out there you're going to see MOA or mils. It's your two most popular. There's some other ones like 1/8 MOA or half MOA adjustments. The advantage of going, for example, an 1/8 MOA is you have a 1/8 of an inch at 100 yards, so very precise shot. Real popular with those high magnification ranges.
A lot of bench rest shooters.
Use that, but sometimes you will be limited on distance when it comes to the custom turret. And then the other one's a half MOA scope, and that's, a half inch at 100 yards. But the advantage of those is you can get really far distance with a custom turret because you're not limiting the adjustment. You're not limiting the real estate on the turret.
Yeah, and I've seen with all of them, it's going to be give and take. Sure. Whether it's, having to do more math, less math, or math you're familiar with, as far as if you're doing calculations, the custom yardage, it matters a little less, and you really want to think about, well, how far do I want to get out? But it is something to consider when you're buying the scope. I can't tell you how many calls I've gotten of guys, or we'll see, they'll select the MOA scope and they'll put MRAD as the value, and we call them and say, well, which one is it? And they're like, I really don't know.
It'll just say on top of the turret usually.
Normally it's going to be up there.
And then you have next zero stop, which is kind of expected nowadays, right? A lot of scopes in the past didn't have zero stops, and it's really an expected feature. A lot of guys will call and say, do you have a zero stop for this particular scope? It didn't come with one, unless we have an aftermarket turret, that includes a zero stop, which we do. A lot of older Leopolds, we do that. But, if your scope doesn't come with a zero stop, and that's a big factor for you, just keep that in mind before buying the scope. It's not something
you can just throw in there and be like, oh, it's fine. Like, that's part of the mechanization or the build of the turret.
Yeah, and if it's a new guy listening right now, a zero stop, what it does is it makes sure that your turret stops at your zero distance, just like it sounds. So you're not losing your zero, because you can rotate that sucker a couple times. And then especially if you put it away in your bag, you're going to forget, oh, crap, where am I at with my adjustment? Going back to zero. I've done that myself,
Only thing that ever saves me is my parallax, because I'll try to do that every time. And I'll be like, oh, I got this yardage. That saved me. But yeah, the zero stop, we get a lot of guys, and that's something to consider, is if your scope doesn't have a zero stop and you're using that long range hunter with the two rotations. very important to put it back before you put it away.
Yeah, that's a rule of thumb. Always dial it back to 0 when you're done shooting, whether it's 1 shot or 200 shots at the range. So,
actually, just took friends out this last week, and I was like 3 feet off. I was like, what is this? And I realized, I'm on the wrong rotation.
Well, there you go.
It happens, and that was on a scope that didn't have a 0 stop.
Yeah, no, I do it all the time, and 0 stop's definitely a nice feature. And then you have next is a locking style turret. So a lot of turrets will just dial freely. Here's actually this S3 is a perfect example because the windage has a locking turret. So the elevation, just a free, as you can see, just a free spinning turret, but on the windage, it doesn't do that. Instead, you got to pull it up, turn it, and drop it back down. That is a locking style turret.
I really like those.
The benefit of the locking style turret is you won't bump it on accident. Right.
It almost removes the need for a dust cap if that's something you're interested in. Correct. It adds another direction it has to be.
I can't even think of a scope out there that has a dust cap with a locking turret.
No.
I don't think they exist. Period. No. So yeah, I mean it's definitely a good feature. Typically, there's a little more mechanics that go into the turret itself underneath that we got to take into account when we're making a custom yardage turret, but something to keep in mind when you're buying. So last thing we talk about with turrets is your clicks per turn.
Right.
So we talked about your click value, but a lot of guys don't realize that you only have a certain amount of clicks per turn and internal adjustment. So if you're trying, again, we talked about this way in the beginning of the podcast. If you have a scope that only has 12 MOA per turn, and you're buying a rifle, 7 PRC, 300 PRC, and you're trying to crank that sucker 1800 yards, well, 12 MOA per turn turret's not going to do it for you, even if we put in a 2 rotation system on it, our long range hunter format. So, I mean, if you want to do something like that, and you got to pick a scope that's going to be 25 MOA per turn. And there are hunting scopes out there that have that much adjustment.
I think 15 to 25 MOA is becoming a pretty common standard. 12 MOA is less common now.
Yeah, it's true.
But even like that Trigicon 10 mile we were talking about earlier, because it's 8th MOA, it's 10 MOA per turn. But some scopes will have a feature where as you're rotating, it's actually pushing the turret up, and you'll see lines underneath, and it'll tend to try to count how many rotations you're on. So if you do forget and you don't have a 0 stop, so that 10 mile may only have 10 MOA per turn. I think I counted, and you can turn it 7 or 8 times.
Wow.
Now I'm not doing 7 or 8 rotations of yardage, but it's there sometimes.
And I mean, it really comes down to real estate on the turret itself. And then talking about a mil scope real quick, mils, you'll typically find 6 to 10 mils per turn on a rifle scope. Is that pretty standard, you'd say? Agree with?
I see some with 5, but I would definitely, that's going to be, again,
5 to 10.
Yeah, 5 to 10.
Cool. Just a quick example. 20 MOA per turn on like a 6.5 PRC, 2 rotations long range hunter, 1,000 yards,
1,000
yards,
1,050. Really depends, because again, this is why we calculate your ballistics. But I've seen guys run 127 grains, and I've seen guys run the 147 grains. So that'll change how far and flat your bullet's going. But definitely, probably 1,000, I would say, for 20 MOA. But that's a question we get a lot: is, well, how far am I going to get?
We'll definitely do a podcast with different loads, bullets, calibers, and figure out kind of distances on different scopes. That'll be fun. We'll talk a whole podcast on that. Cool. All right. There are so many different scope manufacturers out there. It honestly just boggles my mind how they're all keeping each other alive. But there's tons and tons of scope manufacturers. I've seen a lot of them kind of come and go over the years. But there's a ton of them out there. Well, let's get a little in trouble right now and start talking about some. Let's just go for it. What's a scope that comes to mind under $500? What's like your go-to under $500?
Under $500.
Yeah, what's kind of your go-to?
Well, my first scope that I purchased on my own was a Nikon. And I think I paid $230 for it. Yeah. Had a BDC reticle to a 308. And again, the BDC's gonna, whether you're using a different bullet or different velocity, it might not match. Mine matched perfectly. I was very happy with that scope. Sad I sold it. But, that are kind of gone. You might be able to find a used one for a decent price. But as far as factory new, Vortex has a few offerings under that $500 point. Arkin They're
Arkin.
a little newer to the scene as far
Yeah.
as coming back. I think they've been around for a while, but I think as far as newly manufactured scopes,
We're excited about Arkin because not only they have a nice healthy sized turret, but I mean they're so budget friendly. You're getting a lot for what you're paying for too.
I think they're they start at like
$200.
Yeah,
$200 to
$250.
$400. You know, it's not the best scope in the world, but you're getting what you're paying for.
Yeah.
And they're, you know, they got both the hunting scope which is off the top of my head the LH, I think. Was the LH or SH? I deal with so many scopes I don't remember, but they got that one, and then they got all the others, which are kind of toward more stirred towards precision shooting.
Yeah,
So,
they have some, you know, higher end within their own spectrum, and that's something to know. Is we have a lot of people that are, I think, very brand loyal, and you find, and you're like, I swear by them forever. That'll be all I ever use.
Yeah.
And I think I have found that for specific needs, I could go to a specific company and find different things for a specific need, especially within different price ranges.
Yeah, I mean Arkin definitely they've pretty cool scopes.
Yeah,
they
come with a lot of features. You
new,
get the
so-
illuminated reticle. You know, you get nice turrets. You get good feeling adjustment, great range.
Cool. Yeah. What else? Recently I've been really loving the Miopta Mio Sports.
Yep.
A lot of guys have been calling about those lately too. We're not doing turrets right now. We're doing a lot of ballistic strips. We're hoping to change that. We're close to Miopta there. It's just, you know, getting the blanks, but those are cool scopes. Sub 500, they feel premium.
They do.
They feel like a Steiner Predator 4 or even a Zeiss V4. They obviously have their Optica 6 and 5 series, but they feel and look different. They look more of like a Predator 4 from Steiner, but they're great scopes.
I definitely think because before really working here, I hadn't heard of them much. I'd only been dealing with like big distributors, and I don't see them very often at distributors. But it was a scope that when I actually got to look through, I was very impressed.
If you look up online like top rifle scopes, they're usually always in that top 10 list.
Really?
Miopta, oh yeah.
Wow.
Like anywhere you go, they're usually always a top 10. So yeah, they're I've been liking those scopes lately. What else? Yeah, Vortex and Athlon, they have so many SKUs, and they got SKUs from, you know, $200 up to their AMGs.
Thousands.
I mean, you're talking
almost
3,000. I think they retail like 35, but
something like that.
they've definitely they have so many SKUs, and they've created a standard of making you know, budget a good factor for guys, you know, choosing a scope, as well as you know, so many different options to choose from.
Yeah.
But anyway, Nikon too, it's kind of sad they stopped selling scopes. They were the industry standard for a budget friendly scope for a while. You either love them or hate them, because I know there's a lot of you guys out there that didn't care for them, but you either love them or hate them. But they had they were standard for budget friendly scopes for a while. So gosh, who else do you want to talk about? And sub 500.
Sub 500, I mean, normally a lot of brands, like even known for, let's say, being higher end or even military contract, you know, brands, you can find somewhere in there a sub $500 scope or something, because the reality is there's an entry level market. If that is the price range you are looking for, you're probably not alone.
Oh no, there's
and
definitely not.
People want to have bang for the buck. That's a great return. And so there is a whole, I think, honestly, a pretty competitive market right now for it, of trying to give you as much quality and features and within a certain price range. Because I know, like, I personally really like the Vortex, the Venom. I use the 5 to 25. Now you're losing your zero stop, and you don't get an illuminated reticle, but you're getting, I think, a 34 millimeter first focal plane tube. Yeah. And I think those are $500. And so I think for precision shooting, that's a great option.
Yeah, hard to beat that for the price too. Yeah. You got some other big names. So you got Burris Signature HDs. They got 2 to 10. That's sub 500. Of course, you got the Leopold VX3 HDs. I believe they're sub 600, 500. Yeah. So the 3 HDs. So those obviously industry leader. Gosh, so many to keep track of. But yeah, let's jump up to like $1,000, $2,000 range. What are we thinking? What's your go-to? You got let's say a Christensen Arms rifle, 6.5 PRC. What are you putting on it?
Oh man, this is hard because again, you got to go through what am I doing with it. But for the most part, because again, I said I run first focal plane. I'm trying to use as much as possible. Man, I really like the Trijicon Credos.
The Credos? Okay, yeah.
No,
They got a nice healthy turret on those too, the exposed turrets.
It's definitely north of 1,000, but if you're talking about that within the range, I'd say somewhere between 1,000 to 1,500, you're going to see a lot of scopes and a lot of options.
Yeah, the Trijicons, those on the durability factor, those things are tanks. I mean, they're military standard.
Yeah.
And you could chuck those suckers around; they're not breaking. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we do a lot for Trijicon too, and we love those guys. But a lot of AccuPoints too.
Yeah, the AccuPoints, really comes.
And those are about 1,000 to 1,200, I think.
Something like that. Yeah. I think it depends on. Talk about SKUs. They have so many. And
they do too. Well, not only do they have different models, but then you can choose a different illumination color.
Different illumination. If you're running any BDC within Trijicon, every single one's going to have its own.
Yeah.
And then its own reticle color. You can go on forever.
Yeah.
I've seen some of their products, like one model have I think 20 some sub models. Mm-hmm. You can really nitpick at what you want within Trijicon.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I think for hunting, I would probably choose between probably a Zeiss V4 V6.
Yeah.
Between that $1,000-$2,000 range. The V4 is going to be the Japanese model, $1,000-$1,200, and the V6 is going to be a German shot glass standard, and that's going to be overall better glass, different magnification, and you're talking $2,000 for those. So I'd probably put one of those on. I love the Steiner Predator 4s. Not crazy about the turret system on those, but great scope. When it comes to bench, I'd probably put on a Night Force, an ATAC R. Gosh, those are great. Those are probably, in my eyes, like the standard for bench shooting is a Night Force. They even have, I'll let you talk, but they even have the NX8s, which are really popular among our dealers.
Absolutely.
The magnification range 2 to 20. Am I saying is 2.5 to 2.5, 2.5 to 20, and 4 to 32?
Really
that is such a cool magnification range.
Yeah.
But bench standard for me is probably gonna be like a Night Force, for sure.
I see a lot of those, and I see a lot of the AMG lines. You see that perfect bronze color from across the shooting range, and you know what you're looking at.
You know what you're looking at, yeah. Some other big ones, Leica Amplus 6s. We did a promo with them for a while where you buy the scope, you get a free turret through Kenton. A lot of these guys, we've done different promos, but yeah, that was one that was pretty recent. The great glass, European glass. I think those were running $1,300 to $1,500. So those are cool, and they have a 3 to 18, and then I don't remember the other one. But that's a popular one.
The 3 to 18 magnification range, I think, is going to be the new 4 to 16 because you were literally just getting one on each end. I think it does come down to weight, but I know like the Vortex Strike Eagle has the 3 to 18. And gosh, I really do like the 3 power all the way up to 18.
Yeah.
A little side tangent there, but.
Yeah. Then we've been doing pretty recently. It's been about a year and a half, 2 years of Swarovski turrets.
Yep.
So Swarovski have your Z3, Z5, Z6. The Z3 and 5's quarter MOA, and the Z6 is their essentially 1/3 MOA or 1 centimeter. Right? Yep. They round it off to an exact click value, but. With that said, so we have a sleeve turret that replaces all their BT systems, and those are taken off too.
Yeah.
I know Swarovski does them themselves. I hear different things, closed, open. But anyway, we're doing lots of turrets for those for sure, and that's a cool scope. I think the Z3 is a 1-inch tube, if I remember correctly.
I know it's quarter MOA. I can't remember what tube size it is.
Yeah, I think it is, but they're great scopes too. The only thing I hear about those is a lot of guys lose internal adjustment.
Yeah.
So that's something I hear about a lot.
Especially if you run the speed dial system. Well, I think there's even a disclaimer on the website, but if you have the 58 click system, if you're running the zero stop, I think you lose about 8 clicks.
I think you get 53 clicks.
53, so you lose 5 clicks.
So you lose 5 clicks.
And so I think even the Z6, you can either have one that you can use 53 clicks or 46 because there's different ones. So that's something, if you do have that scope, to be aware of if you're ordering a turret.
Yeah, and then another brand we really like is GPO, German Precision Optics. It has that German ingenuity behind it. A lot of their low-end stuff is made in China, but you wouldn't tell that it was made in China. It's a great scope. I like their illumination on those, and they got some cool magnification ranges too. They're one of the companies that are making these compact scopes. Tell some of our listeners about these. These are brand new. You guys don't even know about these.
Yeah, I mean, the compact scope lines, I know they have a 3 to 12, which is one that I was personally looking on putting on my squirrel gun. I think that's just an awesome magnification. And then they have a 4 to 16 compact, if I remember that one right. And I think that one's in centimeters or mils, and the 3 to 12 is an MOA. The 3 to 12 is just a dot reticle, and I want to say the 4 to 16 might actually have the Christmas tree style.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, the thing is short.
They look fun. I wonder how popular they're gonna be. They're literally called compact scopes, and you have your typical hunting scope. Here's actually a GPO here, dust cap cover, right? I mean, this thing's, how long do you think that is? 14 inches?
Something like that.
There's compact, I think it's like 8 inches or less.
They're stubby.
Maybe even shorter than that. But they're coming out with one in the next couple months. Steiner's coming out with one.
Yep.
They're calling it the Predator 4S compact, I think they're calling it too, or something. But those are starting to pop up. So excited to play with some of those.
And for those guys that are looking for weight savings, that's going to be a great style of scope to look out for.
If you want to keep something really, really light, So who else? Hawk's big name we want to mention. Do a lot of their Frontier endurance turrets. Just Primary Arms, we're going to start doing a lot of turrets for those guys. But are we missing anything else before we wrap it up? I think we're hitting an hour here.
Yeah. I think that's about it. Cool. I think to wrap it up, when it comes to what you look for in a scope, I think the best thing you can do is try to look through as many as you can.
Yeah.
And if you can't, try to hunt down or know your feature set that you're looking for when you're going from model to model to model.
Yeah.
Don't pick one because your buddy said so. Don't pick one because you're like, well, the guy at X outfitter told me this is all I need.
Sure.
Try to branch out. Try to look for something that you maybe didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
And really, under the specifications that a lot of those scope pages have, make sure you're getting the right adjustment you want. Make sure you're getting, I thought it came with a 0 stop, or I thought it came with illumination. Do your homework. It's worth the time, especially if you're going to make that investment.
Yeah. Don't get stressed out. I mean, there's so many models out there. It could definitely get stressful, but have some fun picking out a scope. And I know most of you guys have multiple rifles, so pick multiple scopes out and figure out which one you like. But we got James and I taking calls and a bunch of other guys. So if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to give us a call. We love talking scopes. We literally talk them all day. So give us a call. We'll answer any questions you have. And then if you didn't already know, if you buy the scope from us, the ones we have listed, you will get a free turret. So that's $100, $150 value. We sell a lot of Zeiss's, a lot of Vortex, a lot of Steiners, GPOs, and getting ready to sell some Night Forces and some other stuffs too. So give us a call, and I think that's it, right?
I think that's it.
All right, thanks for listening, and hope you guys learned something, and we enjoyed talking.